And so gratitude has a way of turning insufficiency into more than enough, particularly if you're returning to work after a very special Monday. Good morning. Welcome to the Perfect Morning Starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koga, and we're live for you from Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. And I'm not alone, of course. I'm with Jeffrey and Kyrie, brand new from Germany.
Okay, so in case you're wondering what's going on, first and foremost, welcome to the program. Yesterday was Bukola's birthday.
Jeffrey!
So that we'll rest, okay? Happy birthday to you. Are you 54 now or 40? What
16.
are you?
I'm 16. Thank you, Kyrie. I'm 16.
16.
What is this about things? Not embrace your age. There's grace in embracing your age.
I embrace my age and all of it.
Age. You're
but I'm 16.
Embrace your age. So I've always had, embrace your age. That's what it is. So welcome to the program. I just wanted to explain the excess excitement that is coming from the center of the show. Welcome.
I like that. Center of the show.
She's actually the center.
But Jeffrey, I'm always excited. Yeah.
You are always excited.
Yeah.
I love it. Good morning and welcome to the show. Bukola has, I think it comes with the new age. By the way, I'm Kyrie Okikilo, and a happy birthday to you. You should see Bukola's dressing from top to bottom. Yeah. She's looking, 16.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to see you. Last time I saw you was last year.
Yeah, you know. So, guys, what have I missed? What are you tracking?
Well, the country is always in, I don't know. But personally, I came to vent against reckless, illiterate, shameless elements within the Nigerian police who assaulted our colleague yesterday in Port Harcourt. He was doing his job, covering the protest for whatever reason that the police gave, started shooting tear gas or firing tear gas as it may in Port Harcourt. I'm talking about Charles Oporum. And he had to, you know, take a position to capture. That's what our work is, capture what was going on. And a policeman walked up to him because I interviewed him yesterday, spoke to him on TV. And literally started assaulting, asking him questions that, who are you? He showed his ID card, I'm a journalist, I'm doing my work, blah, blah, blah. One thing led to the other, slapped this, dragged him into a bus, tried to drag him into a bus, he refused, put me in a police van, he finally put him in the police van. Then some other policemen who, because he's also a security correspondent, some other police who recognized, say, what's going on, what are you doing here? You know, I explained, they said, okay, what happened? He told them, did any other thing happen? They started apologizing to him. I've always known that one of the problems we have with the Nigerian police force is the threshold of employment. We have great policemen, so these are bad elements within the police force. The level of illiteracy within the police. So when a policeman looks at you and says, you should not, why are you here? The protest, this, that, as though it is not your work to cover the protest. In fact, he was telling me that part of what they told the protesters was like, so you have spoken to the press, why don't you go and back off and all of that? And so many unconstitutional statements. The man was doing his work, you met him, he explained himself to you, you still went ahead and said, you people should not be protesting now, blah, 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 and then you assaulted him, slapped him. Doesn't make sense. So I had to put it up on my Twitter page, X now, and then, what do they call that thing? Is it mentioned, Kyrie?
Yeah.
Police and Muyo Adejobi, so that you can go and fish out. In fact, I'm looking for that policeman's name. The day I told Charles, find that man. We're going to mention his name. I'm going to make sure he's reprimanded. If possible, he's going to be fired because it's a bad representation of the Nigerian police force. What kind of overzealousness? When I was correspondent in Port Harcourt, similar thing almost happened when we were doing the NSAS.
That was not being overzealous, Jeffrey. That was just being unprofessional.
And
outright.
Me, I call him illiterate.
Unprofessional. I mean, overzealous can be, you still do your job, right, but doing it extreme. But this is not what the police should stand for. And we have our correspondent, Charles Oporum, joining us on the program this morning. Charles, I imagine you're still trying to recover from the trauma from what you went through yesterday. As a journalist, doing your lawful job, you were assaulted. I mean, talk us through what exactly happened yesterday, Charles. It's really sad to see that in a democracy, this is happening.
Yeah, good morning, Kyrie. I mean, these are some of the hazards of the job, right? So I am back where it all happened yesterday. So If you look behind me, this is the CFC flyover where mayhem and bedlam was let loose, And that incident occurred here, just like I explained yesterday. The protesters were marching from Isaac Borough Park, which is in that direction. And by the time they got to this flyover, the police reinforced. It wasn't just the police, actually. It was like a full convoy of security vehicles. I could see vehicles from NNS Pathfinder, that's the Navy, the Army, the Civil Defense. They were all in a convoy, so to speak. And they intercepted the protesters. In fact, it may interest you to know that the protesters were just about, say, maybe 20, 25 people, but the security operatives were 5 times that number. So it was almost like using a mallet, a hammer, to swat a fly. And it occurred here. Now, when they started firing tear gas canisters, I came down from the vehicle where I was because I was driving behind the protesters and tried to get some shots of what was happening. The cameraman who was working with me was trying to park his vehicle in this direction where the Catholic Church is. It's off the camera shot now. And one of the policemen, the one who attacked me,
We'll try to reconnect with Charles Operum, recounting his ordeal yesterday. And this, yet again, is just to speak to the leadership of the Nigeria Police Force, the Inspector General, the spokesperson, that a journalist doing his lawful job was attacked, assaulted in the most unprofessional manner by a police officer who's meant to protect and to serve. What Charles got yesterday was not protection, it was attack. And I know we've experienced this in different facets during our jobs, and it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
Very sour taste in the mouth, Kayode. And what the police officer may be ignorant of is that an injustice to one is an injustice to all. What every gentleman of the press and every protester was doing there yesterday was a fight in the cause and course of our democratic journey, which has a very huge question mark on it, as it is right now, with clampdown on protesters. And I'm quite curious, about Charles's experience yesterday. Charles, I'd like to know if you were able to catch the name, on the tag of that particular policeman who assaulted you. And you might just continue with sharing your encounter yesterday. Charles.
Well, the connection is not the friendliest this morning. But this is an issue that we have to raise. It's not just for us. Imagine if a journalist is assaulted this way. I had reports of a similar incident in the nation's capital as well. So if a journalist is assaulted this way, what happens to other Nigerians, really? So we must, it's essentially one for all for one. So if anybody is treated in the wrongest of ways, we must call it out. So to the IGP yet again, that this must be dealt with appropriately. This must not be swept under the carpet.
Absolutely. I think what got me was not just the assaults and all of that. That is, on one hand, that he identified himself. Okay, there's a possibility if there is a crowd, you rain on people, you don't know who they are, even though that is inexcusable. But that he identified himself and you still did what you did to him. We must find that policeman, as far as I am concerned. Charles, if you can just complete your thoughts.
Yes, so as I was saying, sorry, just to tie back to what Jeff was saying. Indeed, when we come for assignments like this, I always have my ID card hanging by my belt case. So this is it. It's always with me all the time. So if anybody says, who are you? I just easily bring it out and show this is my ID card. And I did that with a policeman yesterday. Now, like I was saying before, I had the network issue. Somebody was filming from up here. A cameraman from another TV station was filming from up there, the whole incident that was going on. The policeman chased him up there, confiscated his camera, and forced him to delete everything he had filmed. This happened yesterday. So it's not even as though I was the only victim. It's just because I was physically assaulted and beaten up. But then there were other journalists who were harassed in the line of duty. So this occurred here. And the statement that was released by the police PRO, when I saw the statement yesterday, I was so embarrassed because she basically has referred to us who were here as miscreants who were involved in snatching of phones. That is basically a summary of the statement that SP Grace Eringe-Koko released yesterday when she was asked questions about the conduct of their officers during the protest yesterday. Jeff.
Oh boy. Okay. Thank you, Charles. I'll keep an eye on that. It's a shame that even the police PRO joined in the lies. And what she owes us, I think Grace Iroko. Grace, I know one of her names is Grace. She has to answer to this. There's no point lying. So you must correct what you've done. You must say the truth. That policeman must be found, because we're going to keep escalating this. We're not going to take it lightly. We are doing our job. Section 22 of the Constitution empowers us to do our job. You can't intimidate us. You cannot harass us. It is not a possibility. We're running a constitutional democracy, and this is totally unacceptable. Guys.
And Jeffrey, you know, just to add to it, I was going to land on my thoughts earlier on, you know, to just emphasize the fact that we're all a prisoner of the system, prisoners of the system in one way or the other. I was saying that, you know, every protester there, every journalist was, you know, playing their part in the fight for democracy. And part of what the Take It Back movement is protesting from about April the 7th yesterday was the controversial cybercrime law. And there are concerns about the ambiguity of the law. You know, let me just read what the cybercrime controversial aspect, section 24, verse, subsection 1 says. This section criminalizes sending messages or causing messages to be sent via computer systems or networks that are grossly offensive, pornographic, or of an indecent, obscene, or menacing character, or are known to be false, intended to cause annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, insult, injury. Now, the ambiguity is in the words insult, inconvenience, annoyance. So how do you determine what is an insult, what is an inconvenience, what is annoying? What if those conversations that are being had, being sent from computer systems, you know, are to advance the cause of democracy, particularly if those protesting are protesting their rights to expression and their own inconvenience in the policies of government that have been foisted on them. We've had situations last year where the reporter from FIJ was detained for quite a number of days because he did a thorough investigative story on a government official. That particular aspect of the law must be reviewed by this administration, of which their officials were in the vanguard for, you know, democratic governance about a decade ago, and a lot of them are nowhere to be found. And, you know, history, you know, bears witness to that aspect of this conversation today, where we're in a paradox of some sorts, where they're the ones that are now emasculating the civic space. It's a conversation that is worth having, and I'm glad that, you know, it's part of what we're talking about this morning on the program.
Absolutely. So where we're starting off from is right there. The Take It Back movement has swept across parts of the country, rivers, southwest, even in the nation's capital, Abuja, with protesters gathering in Lagos, Oyo, Rivers, Abuja, demanding good governance from those in leadership. We'll be taking a look at all their demands as well as how to ensure successful and peaceful demonstrations.
Yes, so youths pushing their resilience, making their voices heard, and this is their democratic right to be heard, as long as they do it peacefully. That's the key word, peacefully. As long as they are peaceful, no harm should come to them. Bukola, you have the next one.
Indeed, the prevalent from the civic space, we move on to the economy. And the prevalent economic challenges in the country pose a threat to food business practitioners. And on this week's edition of The Ease of Doing Business, we'll be taking a good look at how those in food businesses are trying to make their profit despite these challenges, and whether or not they're still able to break even.
We turn our attention from food to tech. Yeah, as nations of the world embrace technology-driven learning, we'll be taking a look at the strides Nigeria has made, is hoping to make in digitizing education and making learning easier for students, particularly in the context of the new commitment from the Global Disability Summit, 15% for the 15%.
All right, fantastic. And from there, we get to a segment we call Diaspora Connect, where we touch base with our brothers and sisters who live abroad and what they are doing out there. This gentleman is pushing the frontiers in real estate. Guess where? Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates. So we're going to talk about that. Lots of big money, right? Okay. And away from that, remember you can connect with us. Email is going to scroll on your screen as well as a WhatsApp number. You can hashtag us CTV Morning Brief on X. Let's hear your views. If you're a journalist that was assaulted, please as well send your messages to us. We'll help amplify your voice. Injury to one is injury to all. We'll amplify that until the reckless, shameless, illiterate elements within the police force are fired so that they are not an embarrassment to the entirety of the force. Guys, so let's head to the paper headlines. Mr. Fetai, I understand, is standing by. Mr. Fetai is a public affairs analyst who, helps us break down some of the headlines we see each day. So let's get to, I think we should go to the Vanguard newspaper. Mr. Fetai, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to join you once again.
All right, let's get to the Vanguard newspaper. Police, Cybercrime Act emergency rule protest. So the biggest headline there, police protesters clash in Port Harcourt, Abuja. The riders, Rivers police denies firing tear gas at protesters, arresting journalists. That was a lie, so let's be clear on that. Protests in Lagos, Osun, peaceful. Minister backs protest, warns against destruction of national infrastructure. Mr. Fetayo.
Yes, but we know that this thing is going to happen because of what is going on, and also sometimes the way we play with words, like the emergency rule in River State, where they said that they were not being removed, they are being suspended and all of that. We will leave that to the court to decide anyway. So what we are saying is that people are feeling it, and it's not nice. It's also a call to our government to do the needful. Another side, I would have looked at it like the Take It Back movement or leaders or civil society, that it's high time as well they engage our representatives from different states, so that sometimes when the purpose of a thing is not known and abuse is inevitable, like what the police are saying, that the time is ill and people might hijack it, to destroy the infrastructure. Just like you said, as long as they gather peacefully, as long as they march peacefully, I think they should be allowed for their voice to be heard. And for the like in Abuja, when they said the senior police officer, they are gathering for their, whether police officer did whatever it is. But I think it's the right or duty of the police or armed force to protect life and property, as long as they are doing it peacefully. I think they should be allowed to hear their voices, and a government too should do the needful. They say stitches in time save 9.
Absolutely. And you just wonder if the police is working in isolation for the bad elements as well. They understand the context. If anybody should be in touch the most, it should be the security operatives with intelligence, and they're interfacing with the people. But when you have the same security operatives threatening the peace with some of the actions we saw yesterday from some of them, then really leaves more questions than answers. And you see some pictures showing the protests in Abuja, Lagos, Rivers, and Oyo. And as Bukola said, the same government had led protests, participated in protests in times past. We'll take a look at, let's see. I'm really spoiled for choice when it comes to the headlines this morning. But let's take the Guardian newspaper, speak to some global issues as well. You see right there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper for this morning, Trump's trade war fuels recession fears, disrupts FG's 55 trillion naira fiscal plan. And you see a breakdown, or at least a pictorial representation of how that affects or is expected to affect Nigeria's economy. Nigeria got 14%. One of the African countries.
I think there's one that got 50%.
One of the African countries, instead of retaliating, said, you know what, we're suspending tariffs. And that's Emerson Nagagwa said, rather than doing retaliatory, we're even suspending tariffs altogether. And people are like, are you betraying all of us? I thought we were in this together. But Mr. Ifata, jokes aside, seeing the decisions by President Trump, and you've seen the way Canada, the new Canadian Prime Minister, is also acting towards Trump. Unlike Trudeau, he's saying, well, we have to handle ourselves with respect. What decisions are on the table for Africa? And I'll zero it down to Nigeria. I don't know what's going on with President Bola Tinubu or in his mind in Paris, but what options are available to us, Mr. Fetaya?
Yeah, especially for the Africa, this high time we need to look at intra-trade options where we do more business with brother from this part of the continent. And when we now zero it to Nigeria, you know, sometimes when you depend on stipend, it won't allow you to think outside the box. I think it is high time that the government look at the option that will be more beneficial to the people, especially, you know, some of these funds as well, when they come, or whatever trade they are doing, most of the money, or let me put it in quote, part of the resources ended in a private pocket. I think when there's nothing like that, I think they'll be able to, you know, manage the little resources that we have. What I would say to conclude this part is that we should look more in intra-trade affair between Africa. It is easier for especially Nigeria to do business with other country. When I mean other country, European, the Western world, than looking at inward in Africa. Yeah. So just like other African leaders, this is the high time that AU should coordinate their trade, the movement, coordinate immigration, you know, the security challenges, so that if what Europeans are doing, that you can do business with neighboring country, you can go, somebody in Germany can transact with somebody in Belgium and all of that without little or no restriction. I think it's high time the African leaders should do that, and especially Nigeria, to look at our resources, look at our mineral resources, look at what we can do internally to generate, especially in the area of tourism and all of that. Nigeria is a huge potential for tourism, that we know of a country that survives only on tourism, and they are not even 1/4 of the population in Lagos. I think we can do that as well. Look inward, manage the little resources that we have, and increase internally generated revenue. I think we'll be fine for that. But if not, we can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results.
That's quite instructive, and it's an age-long aspect of the conversation, Mr. Fetayo. I'm just wondering if we may need an explainer, because the first official reaction may have come from the Minister of Finance, who has said that the impact of the 14% tariff slammed on Nigeria from President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs will be negligible on the economy. But this is what we're hearing, perhaps based on expert analysis. I'm just wondering, you know, how we can get clarity about whether or not, or the extent to which Nigeria will be impacted, particularly because the bulk of Nigeria's exports to the U.S. Is crude oil. But listen to what Blueprint is saying. Following Trump's 14% tariff on export, FG to review budget parameters, sustain oil mineral production volumes, are focused, that's the first rider, on budget adjustment, non-oil revenues by FIS customs. That's ascribed, of course, to the Minister of Finance, as I said earlier. Lack of corporate governance, bane of power sector, and that's another reaction to the situation, and that's ascribed, I believe, to Adila, but I wonder if that is the Minister of Finance. But I want you to speak on the ambiguity of the extent to which, you know, the tariffs would affect Nigeria. Is the government just, you know, talking high on optimism without necessarily looking at the numbers?
I think this is time. Sorry. Okay, I think this is high time that the government should lay it down, you know, so that a layman, a market woman could understand. And I think if there's any time the masses or the Nigerians people, they need a subsidy, it should be this time. Of course, kudos to them. They need to review the budget parameter, what they have planned, because it's going to be impacted, and look at the area of goods or services that's going to be impacted as a result of the 14%. So, and see how you can ameliorate it, see how you can reduce the impact on the Nigerian people. I'm sure they've been told, and I'm sure they should look at, especially Minister of Finance and those advising Mr. President, to see these are the areas that we're going to have impact. What can we do to reduce it? What can we do to minimize it? What can we do? Of course, most of our revenue comes from oil, so if we are going to be paying so amount of money, or we are not going to get enough from this, what are the things that we need to do to put in place? Or I think they should do better than just be saying that we are just going to review budget. Who are the people that will be impacted? Who are the people that will be affected?
Okay.
What can the people in that industry do, to go along with us, so that we can what we call survive this time together, because it's not going to last forever.
Mr. Denny Fetayo, the public affairs analyst, joining us to break it down for us. Of course, we know that this tariff war that has started by Trump is going to affect a lot of people, including Nigeria. To what extent is, maybe in the coming days we'll be able to determine, but it will definitely affect us, because our petroleum products is primarily one of the major things we send to the U.S. besides other agricultural produce. But I must thank you, Mr. Fetayo, for coming on the program. We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we will get to that protest that started off yesterday by Take It Back movement. It was across different states, primarily Oyo, Lagos, Rivers, Abuja, and maybe other places. We'll get to hear from what this agitation is really all about right here on the program. Join us in just a moment. Welcome back. So let's talk about the protest that started yesterday, April the 16th, which was coincidentally Nigeria Police Day. We must also say congratulations to the Nigerian police for celebrating their day. But we also will say it's a shame that on the same day they were celebrating their day, some elements were busy disgracing them across the country. So let's balance that. But let's get to the main conversation for the day. Which has to do with the protest that started yesterday. We don't know whether that protest will continue today, but from the letters I saw, it was just for yesterday. We've been joined in the program by the convener and national coordinator, Coalition of Arewa Civil Society Groups, Abdullahi Mohammed, joining us from Kano, our Kano studio. Also joining us from Port Harcourt virtually is the River State coordinator of Take It Back movement, Amanye Kings. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh dear. If Mr. King can hear me, perhaps I would like to start from Port Harcourt, Mr. King. Give us an idea. Okay, I understand. Let's talk to you, Mr. Abdullahi. Let's talk to you, Mr. Abdullahi, since you're available for you to weigh in on the conversation. Last year we had in August, I think 10 days in August, 1st to 10th, we had that end bad governance, and this year we had the initial 30-day rant, and then it's culminating in this protest. We also have tags like end bad governance, issues around cyber law, Cybercrime Act, issues around free speech, and the many tentacles of what the people are advocating for. Maybe you give us a premise of what you understand in terms of your characterization of what is playing out, in terms of people in the last, say, 2 years of this administration, almost 2 years, coming out to say we're not happy with the state of things.
Well, thank you very much. We must understand there's a fundamental principle in democracy, and that is freedom of speech and freedom of association. The Constitution allows people to, protest freely. It is their right. But we must understand that in terms of protest, or whenever there's a protest, the first thing that should come to the mind of average Nigerian is, why are we protesting? there should be a clearly defined motive for such a protest. You understand? Now, I'm glad, like you said, the first, I think, protest that happened in the life of this administration was the End Bad Governance, which started around August 1st last year, 2024. You know, it was a 10-day affair across some parts of the country. But I'm speaking maybe here in northern Nigeria, states like Kaduna, Maiduguri, Kano, and other places. You know, we've seen how that particular protest had actually turned violent. You know, but before then, there was a clear representation of why people are even protesting. You know, it was clearly defined. It was a protest against hunger. Of course, yes, people were hungry, people were angry. You know, a lot of things were not going so well in the country. You know, shortly after the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So people now took up to the streets. It was clearly defined that this is what we are protesting against. You know, it was so peaceful to a point, at least speaking from experience here in northern Nigeria. Before you know, it turned violent, and we saw destruction of lives and properties worth millions. So after the 10 days end bad governance, you know, we could see some semblance of sanity returning. You know, people realized that, yes, of course, it is in their own right to protest. You know, but if it is going to be a protest, it should be clearly defined, like I said, that it's going to be a peaceful protest. But when it turns to arson, it turns to near anarchy, you know, it becomes something else. That even in civil spaces, you know, nobody will condone such kind of mindless destruction of public property in the name of protest. Of course, we've seen that, like I said, happen in other places, especially in Kano and Kaduna. But coming back to... Hello?
Go ahead, please,
yes.
Mr. Abdullahi.
Yes, coming back to what happened in Abuja and Port Harcourt, you know, some members of the Take It Back movement have actually reached out to us to see if we could join this particular protest, to make it a national protest. But we sat amongst ourselves, among the civil society here in Kano and other parts of northern Nigeria, and we asked ourselves, why should we join this protest at this time? Is it really tenable for us to jump in the ship and protest? Of course it is okay for people to protest, but even the definition of that particular protest is quite lost on us. First, there's a hashtag. It is it's called Repeal the Cybercrime Act. You know, the protest is for the Nigerian authority to repeal the Cybercrime Act. You know, and then of course, inside of this, there is also the issue of hunger again. Yes, we mentioned hunger as well. And but if you look at it, part of what we said is, now in fact, it should always be, protests should always be the last option. It should always be the last option. It is when we exhaust all the avenues, all the peaceful avenues, when we try to reach out to the authorities to look into some of our demands. Now, when they fail to do that, then at that point we could embark.
All right, Mr. Abdullahi, just a moment, Mr. Abdullahi.
Even having a clear understanding of why you're protesting. Like myself now, I got to know
my apologies.
The repeal protest.
Can you hear me, Mr. Abdullahi?
Yeah.
We're going to take it to Mr. Kings in just a moment, but in 30 seconds, I want to read something to you. In the letter I have in copy from some of the protesters who embarked on the protest. They say this protest is organized by the Take It Back movement to address numerous anti-people's policies by the government. Example, repeal the Cybercrime Act, rising insecurity in the state, economic hardship. I have another letter that says, I write on behalf of the Niger Delta Congress to notify you of our planned protest, peaceful protest in Rivers State against the declaration of the state of emergency in Rivers State, the suspension of the governor and the legislative arm by the president, and the repeal of the repressive Cybercrime Act. Are you saying these are not clear enough? So let us understand what you're saying. In about 1 minute, I'll go to Kings.
Okay, fine. If you're talking of these are disjointed issues. Of course, if you are protesting and you call it a national protest, there should be a convergence of all other aspects. Now, if you're talking, for instance, the declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, of course, the president has his own rights, and what he has done, whether it's constitutional or not, it's something for those in the lawyers and other persons that had interest for them to talk about. But you don't just bring the issue of Rivers State into the national debate that because there's a declaration of state of emergency. Of course, these are issues, but it has already been solved because the president had already brought out his reasons for that declaration. Now, if you're talking about insecurity, nobody should tell us about insecurity in northern Nigeria, because that is what we are battling, and that was the main reason why we decided that.
All right, Mr. Abdullahi, just a moment. My apologies. I gave you 30. So I'm trying to understand you. I don't think I do understand you, but I think you have made your point clear. Mr. King, let's come to you. We've been waiting for you. So let's piggyback from what Mr. Abdullahi said. He said it has to be a convergence point. You know, yeah, you may have a right to talk about state of emergency, but you can't tell them about insecurity. It's within his right to say the things he wants to say, although I'm trying to understand them. But maybe your take on this issue of the protest, maybe reacting to some of the things he said, and why this protest is important to people like you.
The protest is very, very important to the Rivers people. Protest is very vital because the Rivers State people, we are not at war. We are not experiencing any major insecurity setback, so to say. And the Rivers people came out peacefully to speak, to express their grievances, because as it stands, we don't have a government in Rivers. We are the two arms of government, elected governor, the elected governor, the House of Assembly, have been suspended for no just cause. And so the Rivers people came out to speak, and the police stopped them. It's not an issue of whether it's the right time or what are we supposed to protest about. Protest is a fundamental right of every Nigerian. And so I don't see any reasons to pop down on people who are trying to air their view. So it's a very pathetic situation that in Nigeria we don't have right of expression. We don't have right.
All right, Mr. King, another point he made earlier on is particularly for the northern parts of the country who did not participate in this protest. It says that, well, they're not able to really identify with some of the issues raised for the protest in terms of a state of emergency, security, and all of that. Do you have an issue with that? The fact that he says for northern Nigeria, they didn't participate because they couldn't relate with the issues that you're protesting for? I hope you got me. The connection doesn't seem to be as friendly as it should be this morning. But if you can, Mr. King, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh dear. We'll try to resolve that connection challenge with Mr. King, who's joining us from Port Harcourt. Of course, he is the convener of the Take It Back movement in Port Harcourt. Mr. King, let me just do one more confirmation. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
All right, I'm going to take my question again, and that is regarding the point that was made by our guest in Kano, Mr. Abdullahi Mohammed, saying that, well, for the people in northern Nigeria, they couldn't really relate with the reasons for which you're protesting, and that's why they decided to stay away from it. Do you get that point? Do you think it's a fair enough position to take?
It's not fair because the people in northern Nigeria, they are experiencing insecurity. One of the major reasons why we came out yesterday to express our grievances was this repeal of the Cybercrime Act. And this section, if you look at section 24 of the Cybercrime Act, which states that as a presenter in the studio, if you say something and it's not right, and I come to the media to say this is not right, and you feel that what I have said, my review, or let me say my review about your statement brings pain to you, you can actually sue me and I go to jail for 3 years. So there is there is a tendency by this Nigerian government to suppress the voice of the people, there is no free speech. You understand? So there are things that it's not just about the emergency rule in Rivers State. The emergency rule in Rivers State was one of the things that brought us out yesterday, but another thing was the repeal of the Cybercrime Act, which I think it's not it will not do us any good. Like what we saw yesterday, journalists were beaten, and there was no press presence in the protest because people's cameras they will seize cameras, and it's only in dictatorship, in the military regime, that we see things like that. But we are beginning to see them in civilian governments. So that calls for concern, and that is why we are speaking up, and we are saying that we cannot take this because they are doing it to me today. Who knows the person they are going to do it to tomorrow?
All right.
Press.
All right, Mr. King, just a moment. I need to bounce off some of the points you made of Mr. Mohammed. And let me just ask you, Mr. Mohammed, he said, well, he doesn't think that's a fair position to take because this fight is also, it's not just for people in the River State, it's for Nigerians, because when that law is being implemented, it will affect everyone. So just to be clear about your position yet again, are you saying that everything is hunky-dory for you when it comes to Nigeria and you're fine with the status quo in terms of the law, the actions of government and all of that? Are you fine with it?
No. I cannot say completely and absolutely that everything is going so well in this administration. No, I can't say that. Of course, there are challenges, numerous of them.
So what are those challenges for you, Mr. Abdullahi?
I think nobody should tell us about challenges here in northern Nigeria because we are faced with one of the greatest existential threats, which is insecurity. So we all know about these challenges, and that's what we're trying to combat. And now talking about what he said about the repeal of the cybercrime law, you know, we put out a press statement yesterday in effect to that particular hashtag. What we're trying to say is there should be dialogue. You understand? How many, like myself now, I got to know about the Cybercrime Act 2024 about a week ago. So there should be a broader engagement for people to understand what is actually in that particular bill. What are the merits? What are the demerits of that particular bill? So by the time you do that, when we have a broad-based discussion for people to engage in dialogue, of course. You know, if you take, for instance, the issue of the tax reform, the recently passed tax reform, you know, there was a huge outcry. But when they now put it on the table for public presentation, people get to understand which is right, which is not. I think we should be able to do that. And that was part of what we said in the press statement yesterday, that there should be greater dialogue, you know, across board for people to understand what is actually in that particular bill. You know, and if we are protesting, if we are calling a protest, okay, for the repeal of that particular bill, let it be on that. But by the time you begin to have different, you know, ideas, you know, portfolio of issues like that, so people get confused at what exactly we're looking at. Like I said, talking about challenges, the government, yeah, of course, there are a lot of challenges. Don't forget, people protested against hunger last August. And it was across board, you understand? So even Northern Nigeria took part in that particular protest. But now let's look
Mr. Mohammed,
I don't know for other places, but government, in my own opinion, had actually done something. Of course, I'm not their spokesperson, but during the Ramadan, we saw how prices,
Mr. Mohammed,
price of foodstuff here dropped significantly.
I'm trying to understand you, Mr. Mohammed, because on the one hand, you acknowledge that there are challenges, but on the other hand, you said earlier that perhaps some of the reasons that the Take It Back movement are protesting do not resonate with the people of the North. So I'd like you to provide some form of clarity. Which block of people are you talking about from the North? Because we can cite positions expressed by northern leaders at the National Assembly who have espoused that indeed the North has been shortchanged by this particular administration. So which northern groups are you you know, quoting when you're saying that the agitation of the Take It Back movement does not resonate with people from the North?
Well, Point of correction. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying completely it does not resonate. I mentioned issue of security, and that security challenge has always been the one that is on the front burner, especially in northern Nigeria. Now, of course, nobody can deny the fact there are challenges in the north. That is one of the greatest challenges we are more concerned about. Now, if you're talking about what the National Assembly leaders are talking about being shortchanged by this administration, well, it is up for them to look at it. It's pure politics as far as I am concerned. It does not take the fact that the president is, like I've seen statements that there's the urbanization, you know, of the north by this present administration. Well, if you look at it now, the president has his own reason for doing that. Of course, we feel bad because we feel there are some people, you know, across northern Nigeria and other places too that needed to be part of the administration. But if the president sees within himself that this is what he feels is right for him to do that, and he has not breached the constitution, of course, nobody can change that. We've seen what happened with the previous administration. It is not about who you get in the position, but how competent those people are. We've seen a situation whereby, like I said, in the last administration, something similar played out, where you have Northerners take over key positions. But what do we have in Northern Nigeria? At the end of the day, what I'm looking at is most of the things these people do is they consider government appointment as a personal vehicle for self-enrichment.
So
if you are given
I may come in there now.
If you look at, let's even go back to the last.
So, Mr. Mohammed, if you reel out all these challenges, why does the Take It Back movement agitation not resonate with you or with the people of the North that you cited?
What the point I'm trying to say is, if you're looking at, you have a variety of issues you bring all together on the table. You are talking of repeal of the cybercrime. You're talking about emergency rule in River State. You're talking about insecurity. What I'm trying to say is, if we're having a greater challenges, now take for instance, you talk about security, or rather general insecurity in the country. It will resonate with us so much, so that we'll look at it as a national agitation or a movement. We'll come together. But by the time you begin to look at it that, okay, fine, the Rivers Assembly, you know, there's an issue with that, the repeal of the cybercrime, you know, which most people in northern Nigeria, I'm sorry to say, does not even understand what even in that particular bill. I stand to be corrected. So what I'm looking at is there are greater issues that you could bring to the table. It should be a national dialogue for people to key in.
All right, Mr. Abdullahi.
I cited an example of the.
All right, Mr. Abdullahi, because of time, we need to. If I may come in, Mr. Abdullahi. All right, Mr. Abdullahi, if I may come in, so that we can go to Mr. Kings. But from what you have submitted, it sounds to me like there's more reason for you to start your own protest than any other person. There was a carnage on the plateau recently, and there has been all kinds of insecurity. And when you say you've been dialoguing, well, you have a right to say what you have to say, and we'll always respect what your opinions are. But just like when I hear you, it's like you're saying one thing on the other end and agreeing with us, and agree with the Take It Back movement on one hand. Perhaps they didn't put it well for that section of the country to be able to come along. But let's take it to Mr. King. Mr. Kings, in rounding off, what is the way forward now? Is there going to be more protests just as we begin to wind down?
First of all, let me respond to your guest in the studio. He keeps hammering on northern Nigeria, not aligning with the demands of the protests. Is he trying to tell me that the northern Nigeria does not read? Or is he trying to tell me that there are no members of the National Assembly from northern Nigeria where they will hide bills? They will hide bills and pass them overnight, and people, there is no... The National Assembly does not give room for people to actually be part of the process of lawmaking in Nigeria. So what I'm saying is there's no right time for you to speak out. This protest that happened yesterday, I was shot at. The national president of the NDC was shot at. We have people who collapsed, who are still in the hospital as we speak. But that does not deter our to speak up. You understand? I'm struggling to hear you. The network is poor, but what I want to say is there's no right time to speak. And in as much as I'm concerned, in as much as the Rivers people are concerned, We were out yesterday to register our voices, and we will continue to do that from time to time. We notified the police, we notified all security agencies to give us, at least to provide security for us. But we got there, and what we see is that the police was, instead of providing security for us, they were against the Nigerian people. And it's a situation that I don't think it's going to change anytime, because we have an illegitimate person who is in the helms of affairs of the police, in the person of the Inspector General, whose tenure has elapsed and is staying in office on extension. You understand? We have people who tenures expire and they leave office. But when you see a situation where they keep extending the tenure, then you see that there is something at the back that they are trying to do. There is an agenda.
All right, Mr. King. I think we've gotten your point. Gentlemen, we must thank you both for coming on the program, sharing your perspectives as far as the issue of national interest is concerned and the issue of the protest that started off yesterday. We must thank Amaye King, Rivers State Coordinator of the Take It Back movement, who joined us virtually from Port Harcourt, although the network did allow us to get all his submission. Abdullahi Mohammed is a convener and national coordinator, Coalition of Arewa Civil Society Groups, joining us from Kirby. Thank you for coming on the program as well. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we're not just done yet with issues of national importance. We'll continue that trajectory in just a moment. Join us again.
And so Nigerian youths defied police warnings and threats yesterday and hit the streets to protest issues of governance, and particularly the cybercrime law, under which many Nigerians, even in the life of this administration, have been arrested, for putting out content that may not necessarily go down well with certain people or persons in positions of authority. So what is the continuing impact of this on the civic space? Let's have this conversation, and this is especially important, particularly because members of the Take It Back movement have said this is only the tip of the iceberg. As they returned after the hashtag End Bad Governance last year, they're going to return with another one. And so joining us on this particular segment of the program is Mr. James Ugochukwu, election analyst and good governance advocate. He's also the General Secretary, West Africa Civil Society Forum, who joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have Mr. Chetam Mwala, a legal practitioner and activist who joins us via Zoom from Port Harcourt. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the program. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Mwala, particularly because of what we saw play out yesterday in Port Harcourt, and even our own correspondent was attacked, brutalized by a police officer, even though he had identified himself. What are your reflections on what transpired yesterday in Port Harcourt, and particularly the conduct of the police? Because this protest happened on Monday, which happens to be the National Police Day, for which the police is supposed to be celebrating its values of community engagement and, if you like, civil police relations yesterday. Mr. Mwala.
Good morning, and thank you for having me once again. I must say that what happened yesterday was actually pathetic and avoidable, and especially with what we have seen over the years and the reportage we have had on the Nigerian police as of today. Now, I was on the street myself, and I joined the protest yesterday. And I must tell you that even if we're not quite much in number, we proceeded. And with our number, the number of police vehicles, not just the police, we also had the army, the civil defense, against how many persons? Against harmless citizens who came out to demand for good governance, which even the police would benefit from this same good governance. The truth of the matter is that it seems the Nigerian police has defied reforms. And from the look of things, we cannot reform the Nigerian police as it is today. That is the impression they are creating. Because tell me, why shouldn't the police act professionally in dealing with issues of this particular magnitude? You know, what we saw was a situation, don't forget, we had written to the police, gotten approval from the police, and the police gave approval for the protest to hold. Now, all of a sudden, they made a U-turn that particular morning. And in making the U-turn was sending an officer to come and one Frank Udo or something, sending him to come and inform us that we can no longer continue with the said protests in the designated area where we had agreed with them we were going to stay to hold the protest. And at the point, he saw this with us and decided that we should continue with the protest, which we actually embarked on. Now, in continuing with this particular protest, they decided that they were going to provide security for us. And we said, good and fine, it's a beautiful thing, and we welcome it. Only for us to proceed, and we believe that there had been a counter instruction to them that they should stop the protest holding in Port Harcourt, which had nothing but demanding that democracy should be returned to Rivers State. Democracy, that the Cyber Crime Act should be repealed. And that we should have something better that will not quell the voices of the people. Now, it is sad that an institution that is supposed to protect the citizens are now the ones attacking the citizens and coming after the citizens. Now, more shameful is the press statement issued by the PRO of the police in Rivers State, where she had said that they saw people looting phones and stealing from people, and they had to use tear gas to disperse the people. If a person is stealing, if a person is looting, with the police, in a way of addressing such a situation, do you use tear gas to dispel someone stealing? Don't you arrest the person for stealing? But because you have a very unprofessional body running as the police in this country, and especially in Rivers State, it tells you the behavior of these persons, that they just come up, make statements without even having proper guidelines. So when we are supposed to celebrate the police, and we had expected that by the end of the peaceful procession yesterday, the police would have acted professionally, and we would have joined them in celebrating their works. But trust me, as of today, I don't think I have any reason to celebrate the police, the Nigerian police. I don't have any reason to celebrate the Nigerian police, because it's like the bad eggs in the police are now more than the good police officers we have today in the Nigerian police.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Anwala. Let's expand the conversation and go to Mr. Ugochukwu, who is in our Abuja studio. Mr. Ugochukwu, should we henceforth, after the conduct of the police yesterday, take the National Police Day seriously as a day to celebrate the professionalism of the Nigeria police force?
The thing about police is that it's an institution that we cannot afford not to work with. Like as we are sitting in the studio now, if you get back to your estate or wherever you live and you have any issue with anybody that threatens your life or something of that nature, the first person you go to is police. If there's a burglary in your house or if there's a threat of armed robbery, the people you go to is the police. In the church I attend, even before they start their national police celebration day, the church I attend personally, we celebrate Police Day specially. We did it about 3 Sundays ago. And it's something we do annually to celebrate the police. But that is not removing the fact that we need to look at the issue of the kind of policing we have in this country. It's obvious that the police have not departed from the colonial policing that were brought by the colonial master, which is protect the queen and, attack anybody that wants to bring a dissenting voice to the authority of those in authority. So these are the issues that we should be looking at. So it's quite unfortunate that we're having this conversation a day after National Police Day. What the police did yesterday was completely uncalled for, given that that is the day they want to celebrate their wins. So what I expected them to do is to ensure that, okay, if there is a protest, then why do you have intelligence, the CID and all that among you? Gather the intelligence and be sure that this protest is not out to destroy anything or is not being funded to usurp certain authority and something of that nature. Then the next thing you do is to provide protection for these protesters or contain where they will get to in terms of spread and all that. But going about shooting people, like the one I'm watching here, the policeman was just shooting as if it's in a shooting range, dodging and shooting and all that. If they can deploy that kind of expertise to pursuing bandits and terrorists, I don't think we'll have any problem in this country. I think police should respect the right of citizens to protest as enshrined in the Constitution in Section 40 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Because as we speak, the Constitution guaranteed, and let's remember that this Constitution was even given to us by the military. They respected the right of people to assemble and the right of people to protest. That is why you have parks all over the country. If you come to Abuja, for instance, now you have the Unity Park. If you go to even the National Assembly, you have the arcade that central circular place in the National Assembly. That place is meant for people to come and protest. And there's a podium where the Senate President or the Speaker can come and address the people. So all these things are constitutionally guaranteed rights that the police should start respecting going forward. But what do we have? The Unity Park that we have in Maitama there now, the place used to be very, very open. But during Buhari administration, they barricaded that place in such a way that you can't even go in there to protest. Because what that place was meant for is for people to come in. It's called Unity Park for a reason. For every Nigerian to come to that place, protest, and disperse. So what we expect the police to be doing is that if there is a notice for protest, you tell whoever is organizing the protest to go into that Unity Park or Freedom Park in Lagos or whatever park that is available in any part of the country to do their protest. And what the police should do is to form a ring of protection around the protester. Let them rant what they want to rant. The only time you attack them is when they start destroying public property. Then you now know that they are looking for trouble. But if people are carrying placard and chanting anti-government slogan and all that, allow them to rant all their rant, because protest is very good for any government. It's a feedback mechanism and it's a monitoring and evaluation mechanism to the government to show to determine if they are doing well or if they are not doing well. All over the world it's like that. If you go to the US, people are protesting. If you go to the UK, we have where they
My apologies. Let's take it back to Ms. Anwala. You've raised some very important points, Mr. Ogochukwu. We're going to come back to you. Ms. Anwala, let's see, from what you have said, Ms. Anwala, from what you have said and what Mr. Ogochukwu has just submitted, it appears to me that our police need some level of reorientation, if you will, reform or re-education. I really don't know. I'm trying to look for the appropriate word here to be able to say exactly where do we begin from. So where do you think we should start from? Let's take that to Ms. Anwala. As a lawyer, where do you think we should start from in re-educating the Nigerian police? One of the things I have identified is some police officers are near illiterates. That is one of the personal observation. I've also seen police officers who are PhD holders, brilliant officers, and then you see the other kid and you're wondering what exactly is this mismatch at the end of the day. So where do we begin from? Because as Mr. Ogochukwu has said, we cannot do without the police. It's even more dangerous to be without the police, especially in a country like Nigeria. So where do we begin this education from? Because something is missing, and those citizens need permission of the police to protest. It's just to inform the police. Do they need permission? You're a lawyer, so maybe those two questions.
You know, one of the things I think it's actually important is and the issue of permission. Let me just address the issue of permission first. Now, one of the things I think is important is because we have known the pattern of the Nigerian police.
All right, maybe
what we normally do in circumstances and situations like this is to write to the police and inform them, as well as get some level of approval, not necessarily approval per se. However, when we come back to talking about the issue of the reform of the police, the Nigerian police of today looks like it has deferred any form of reformation. What we need is a total overhaul of our policing system. A total overhaul of our policing system. Because even those you think are professionals, even those you feel are quite educated and literate, you discover that they are acting the script. They are actually doing the biddings of a particular political paymaster against the citizens they swore oath and they seek to protect. And this is a challenge. And the big question has always been, how do we reform the police? There has been lots of training, reorientation programs for the police, but it seems like it's not having any effect on the Nigerian police. And this is the problem. It's a major issue. So we need a total overhaul of the Nigerian policing system, because what we are seeing today is not policing. It's not even policing according to global best standard of policing. You see a situation where now there is, as of today, we have a natural rift between the Nigerian citizen and the Nigerian police. Where when you, as a citizen, you see a police, you already have issues with the police, whether he has done something wrong or not. Because this is what the perception the Nigerian police have created in the minds of the people. Let's not even talk about the bribery and corruption within the policing system that is happening in this country. And you ask yourself, what are the measures to sort out these particular issues? That you take a matter to the police, the Nigerian police will first ask you for money before they go out to actually effect an arrest or carry out an investigation on a particular issue. So where do you exactly start from? Do you start dealing with the issue of the corrupt practices? Of course, you have a situation where police officers extort people every day.
All right, Mr. Waller.
But when we come and ask ourselves, what do we do in this circumstance?
All right, let's take this to Mr. Ogochukwu. I think you've made quite some points, really, and for you still feel there needs to be a total overhaul, not just some of these reforms that we see here and there. But Mr. Ogochukwu, you know, the police operates in a context, and we must also situate that. There's a context of the government, right? The executive, even the legislature and the judiciary, right? And the police is meant to be law enforcement. So whatever you see the police do most times is really flowing from the top, right? So in that context, let's speak to the government itself, a government under which this current police finds itself, either as a victim or a collaborator, as the case may be. And when you look at some of the points of this protest, for example, the state of emergency declaration in Rivers State, the appointment of a sole administrator, again, I ask you, would you say that it's fair enough for this protest to happen? Because some will say they've tried to go through the legislature, all of them voted for it. They've tried to seek other means. So this is the only one available to the people. So isn't it fair that they go about their business in this manner?
Well, the Constitution is very clear that sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom the government, through the Constitution, derives its power. So this is the difference between democracy and military dictatorship. So anything you are doing in terms of policy, in terms of executive order and pronouncement that is not factoring the feelings of the people, then you are not helping matter there. So the people coming out to say that they want to protest, then the government should listen to them. Okay, the state of emergency has been declared for 6 months and all that. The question you'll be asking yourself is, okay, do we need the whole haul, do we need to go the whole haul of 6 months before we can restore democracy back to Rivers State? These are the questions that is begging for answer. The another question is that, okay, is Rivers State worse off in all the states in terms of insecurity, in terms of instability, that a state of emergency has to be declared? So these are the questions people need to be asking. Then on the part of the protester, the question you're asking is that, okay, are they protesting or rioting? Because these are the two things that I think our security operatives have not been able to differentiate. They've not been able to differentiate between rioting and protesting. Protesting is an organized voicing of dissenting ideas to a particular issue with government or that. And rioting, that one is breakdown of law and order. And these are not the case here, because from what the gentleman said earlier, they obtained permission from the police to protest. they started giving them protection, and at some point they started firing tear gas on them. So all those kind of a thing is not very good in a democracy. For as it is, why you see the police behaving the way it is that we still have a police that is completely under the grasp of the people that appoint them, which is the executive and the legislature that clears them at the end of the day. Until we start having a policing system that were independently recruited, that are beholden to nobody but to people of Nigeria, we keep on having this issue. Because most of these activities we are seeing now, maybe, just maybe, the executive did not solicit for the assistance of the police to be dispersing. Maybe they are just trying to do it, thinking that this is what will please the people that put them in power or something of that nature. So these are the things you should be looking at. So the recruitment process of the police hierarchy and the head is very, very important. The kind of recruitment, the caliber of people we recruit, the kind of orientation we give them, and the kind of work order will give them, standard operating procedure that will give them. All these things will help us to see how we can now have a people-friendly police. Because as we speak now, the Nigerian police say that they are our friends. Yes, apparently they are our friends. But just like the other person, the legal practitioner said, if you see a police on the road, the first thing that came to your mind is fear. Because the police person are supposed to protect you, but with the person touching gun, don't know the next thing the person is trying to say. And of course, if you look at the distribution of the police service now, more of the policemen are guiding VIPs in Nigeria as we speak now. VIPs from the people in the government to ordinary individuals that don't even have any business with police guiding them, to people that can just afford police to guide them. We've seen police just following celebrities as personal guards and all that. And the question I'm asking is, what happens to the rest of the citizens whose taxpayers' money are being used to fund the salary of police, and the police is not protecting them? In my street like this, it's an estate that is spanning over how many acres? Cannot see one single policeman around that place. So these are the issues we need to be interrogating.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, particularly if we recall looking into the, the document of promise of this administration. They had, projected that they would redeploy all police officers who were protecting VIP to other departments, but we haven't seen that happen because the bulk of our police officials are still in the protection of very important personalities. But let's look at the cyber crime, the controversial Cyber Crime Act, particularly as it relates to what the role of lawyers should be. We have legal departments in police divisional offices in this country, but we see that time and again protesters are charged with very, very bogus charges when they come out to protest. How do we deal with this, particularly as it contrasts with, I believe, Section 39 of the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of expression? What should be the role of lawyers or the NBA at the association level, to tackle this ambiguity once and for all, such that constructive freedom of expression can be guaranteed? I'll take this to Mr. Nwala this time around.
Sometimes I feel for the leadership of the NBA, because at some point the NBA is actually helpless in the circumstance. And one of the things the police seek to achieve in whatever they do is the police try as much as possible. The police try as much as possible to make sure that whomever they arrest in cause of a protest, that they bring up bogus charges against the person just to detain the person and to make sure the person does not get bail. But the essence of the law is not to indict anybody in this circumstance. It's to just provide law and order within the country. That is the essence of the law. But what we find the police do, the police would lure a citizen into a particular crime, and at the end of the day, arrest the citizen and try to prosecute the citizens. We've seen the police for a mere stealing. The police will bring in murder charges, knowing fully well that murder is not a bailable offense because it's a capital offense in the circumstance. So just to make sure that the protester or the person in question suffers, the police brings up bogus charges. We have seen this happen on several occasions. The NBA has tried as much as possible to have to reach some level of agreement with the police on several occasions on some of these issues. But unfortunately, like we said, it's sad that even within the police, there are lawyers, they have legal departments. But the big question is, do they consult with the legal department before they take certain actions? And even where they consult with the legal department before taking certain actions, do they actually take the advice of the lawyers within that particular framework? Because if they do, I don't think we would have some of these human rights violations we have across the country. We will not have it. But today, the reasons why we're having these sufferings here and there and having these bogus charges, because normally before a charge goes to court, from the police station or from wherever, from the police, it's supposed to go through the legal department. But we see a situation where an IPO prepares the charge, goes to the DPO to sign on it, and takes it straight down to the court. And the person is charged. The IPO would put up all sorts of charges on top of the charge and take the matter to the court. And you ask yourself, what exactly is happening in this particular system? The essence is just to suffer that every police department or police division is supposed to have a legal officer. But do they have these legal officers that should guide and direct them properly on human rights? I think they don't. A lot of them do not have these legal officers. So when we talk about the issue of the reform of the police, Nigerian police does not need a reform. Right. It needs a total overhaul. Because today the IG says something, tomorrow he's saying something else, or the commissioner of police is giving a contrary instruction, and you create confusions in the minds of the citizens and of the people. There's little or not. There's not so much as a professional body the NBA can do in the circumstance.
All right.
To the police and look for.
All right, Mr. Wanda. Yeah,
issues.
We must anchor at this point a very Hydra-headed issue, apparently. But I wonder if the NBA is as helpless as you say they are. If they're watching by proxy, they can decide to champion the cause. But we must thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time on the program. We've been talking with Mr. James Ugochukwu, election analyst and good governance advocate, General Secretary, West Africa Civil Society Forum, who joined us from Abuja studio. We've also been talking with Mr. Chetam Mwala, a legal practitioner and activist who joined us via Zoom from Port Harcourt. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the program, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having us.
And so from here, we transit to a look at the civic space, at the ease of doing business space, rather, as it affects the food industry. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
We're joined on the program by Chef Paul Abdul, a hospitality consultant and CEO, Face Food Concept. Is that We're joined on the program by Chef Paul Abdul, a hospitality consultant and CEO, Face Food Concept. Is that why you have a face cap on?
I love face caps, my friend. I love looking smart.
I couldn't help it. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We're not even going to talk about how and why food is important. I think we've crossed that bridge already, particularly because a lot of people have had their breakfast already, unlike us, we're busy working. But the conversation today is about ease of doing business, particularly in Nigeria's food industry. And I want you to start by giving us a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. How impacted would you say the food industry has been by all of the different factors attendant in Nigeria today? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very little and 10 being very much.
Like impact of the food industry, right?
Yeah, the impact on the food industry.
10.
Like very much.
The impact of the food industry is like the air you breathe.
Okay. So I take it that you're saying that the food industry has been largely impacted by the economic situation, the security situation. On a scale of 1 to 10, it is 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, if we say let's start by saying, okay, what does the food industry mean? Yeah. It's like air we breathe, but right. By the being impacted by the economic situation, it's 1. I mean, 10. 10, almost 10.
There you go.
Why? You say ease of doing business, right? Unfortunately, ease of doing business is not easy. It's not easy at all. I can't even lie.
But, you know, you operate in a sector that is vital to survival. Before people think of buying a car, buying a house, or buying clothing, they'll think of buying food. Food naturally comes first. So what are the biggest challenges confronting the food sector, or the food industry in Nigeria today, at least from where you sit?
I think majorly transportation. As simple as it looks or sound, you move things, logistics, and the cost of logistics, when it increases, it multiplies. The multiplier effect goes into the pricing and costing, because for you to get food on the table, there's food costing. And so the impact of the increase in fuel affected everything. So for the food to appear on the plate, there are so many variables that have gone on behind before you see that plate. So there are different industries and business that affects. Like the plate itself, somebody has to manufacture it locally or it's imported. Yeah. And the dollar rate affects it. From the farmers that struggle not just only to get fuel for the truck that carries it, but the roads are bad. Mm-hmm. And then the cold chain is affected also, because we don't have very good storage system that can transport food, keep it in the right temperature, and deliver it to the main source where it should be prepped and delivered to the table. So there's a whole lot of variable. I think the Ease of Business Act was enacted in 2023 by Buhari, but since then it has not been easy.
Oof. So when you talk about transportation, help us break it down. There is the element of the impacts of PMS price on cost of transportation.
Yes.
There is all the levies and fees they pay.
Yes.
So break it down for us, because we're here to unpack it for policymakers who are listening and for business people who are also listening. Okay.
First, let me give kudos to SMEs, foodpreneurs that are really helping, regardless of on the daily grind, regardless of the odds facing them, they're still doing their best. Now, government policies affect business beyond the day-to-day fuel transport, but the government policies, the different red tapes, that you have to, face on a daily basis. Somebody wants to establish business, and then you have to deal with government. And the government's supposed to make it easy for you. You have different clearances. You have, they will come with different...
Please, break it down for us.
I'll break it down. Okay. I consulted with somebody in Ikorodu recently, and we had to get permits for, starting from even the kitchen to get the equipment, you have to get permits from the Ministry of Health. That one, local government will come, different people will come from that sector. Then you have to get permits for your adverts, your signage, that's one. Then you have to get permits for how you are constructing it. Now, when we do the schematics of the space, you see government regulators still coming to say, okay, you did this here, you have to get permits for it. So and then because of what they will bring to you, most people that are novice in it, they will start paying and bribing. Because they'll make it difficult for you. But it's not supposed to be so. So a lot of people tend to operate from their homes and use technology online, Facebook, Instagram, and all that. That's one of the safest ways people are succeeding. And those that have been able to cross those red tape and establish their businesses, presently, some have to even close down. Why? Because if the government is supposed to make it easy for you to operate, why does it have to be so hard? I was at a friend's place that has a business, and right in front of us, local government officials came, say somebody that they are not supposed to park here, and they started, they had to, how do they call it? They had to lock the cars.
No.
And
clamp it.
Yeah, they clamped it, and the guests did not return. They left.
Give us an idea of what this red tape costs to food business owners? Like when they come, to charge you for your outdoor advertisements and all of this, how much do you part with?
It varies. They come with a list. Some they even come with, even if you don't have there's this one for radio, TV and all that. Excuse me, they come with a whole lot of lists. And then they will put exaggerated costs, like you see, okay, for your noise pollution and all that, for the sound permits, they'll put about 350,000 naira
per
for the year. Also, another one will come with.
Do you pay it one-off? Or
it's one-off, and then that's just one side of it. Then there is the Ministry of Health. They will write you, they will visit you. And what they come to do is check your systems, your operations, your storage, and everything, canned goods, the ones that are dented. They check if you have a fat trap stored. And sometimes some of your businesses, like let's say if you have a smoothie making business, why would you need the fat trap? You're dealing with fruits and vegetables and you're doing that. And they will come with, sometimes they don't even bother about how you are set up. Because there are policies for all these things. But the local government officials, they are not, I don't think they are very enlightened about how they're supposed to do these things. And sometimes they come with area boys, so it has to be by force. So people have learned to cope with them because, you see, the ease of the business is the passion that you have for the business because you have to survive and you love it. If you don't love it, you quit the business.
So you're dealing with the Ministry of Health, local government officials,
yes,
and perhaps the ministry, another ministry.
Environment, what's it called? The garbage disposal unit people and all that. So, and then that's another issue. You sign up with them, they have to clear your garbage. How can you go and eat in a beautiful restaurant and it's smelling in front? So how does the SME survive? You have established businesses, brand like the Sheratons, the Cotel. They have their clientele already. They have their guests. They have an established system for upscale. And if you're getting into fine dining, you want to do fine dining, you will suffer because you import your steaks. You import your some like soulfish. Some people import some kind of prawns. People import, even though we have some here. But how do we now? We are the one making it easy for ourselves by trying to be innovative, source from farm, close by. People are getting into farming, but where is that ease of doing business that the government comes in and says, okay, you have BOI, you understand? They support some, but it's few and far between because it's just too much.
And you can't continue to tax, in that sense, poverty. You can only tax prosperity. So government should give that ease indeed. Then we can say, let's tax the profit, but not tax people that are still suffering. And you've made quite a lot of points, which is meant to be feedback for government at the local, state, and the federal level. And this is what we do on the show, ensure that we bring businesses who are right there in the trenches, in that sense, to give feedback to government. You go to some places and you see VAT, you also see consumption tax. I'm wondering what's going on. I thought VAT is already a consumption tax, but no, they add that to it as well.
It's about 5%.
So people don't go back.
You pay your VAT, 7.5, pay consumption tax.
Okay, we're
totally out of time, really, because we just want to keep it as short as possible. Quickly, one of the presidential aides said you can get food for $1 in Nigeria.
A meal.
A meal. How good a meal can you get for $1.5?
$1. How much is it in Naira?
1.5. Let's just say 1.5.
How good a meal can you get?
Bala and fish.
I think you have answered that question already.
Not good a meal.
And they say it's even good in Lagos. If you go to other parts of the country, you can't get a meal for 1.5 anymore.
Exactly.
We have to thank you so much.
And he's an advisor on the economy.
There you go. So this is good data.
Interesting.
For government. We'll be speaking with Chef Paul, hospitality consultant, CEO of Face Food Concepts. Thank you so much. Wish your business the very best. We'll be keeping tabs with you and other businesses to ensure that we provide feedback.
Amen. I pray your station continue to expose this and let the government do something about it.
Amen to that.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a quick break now. If you're a business owner, send us feedback at themorningbrief@channelstv.com. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we're back with some more for you. So stay with us. We're joined on the program by Chef Paul Abdul, a hospitality consultant and CEO, Face Food Concept.
I've been joined on the program by Olatubo Sunfatoki, is the CEO, Crest Range Properties LLC, limited liability company, joining us virtually. Mr. Bosun, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
When I read about some of the things you do and where you do it, I said, this man must be a very wealthy man. Am I wrong?
Well, I wouldn't want to say much about that, but I mean, we can make a living, and we're making a living. So that's all I can say.
Okay, let me begin with a poser from Nigeria. I know you do your real estate business. I don't know whether you also do real estate in Nigeria, but I know primarily you do real estate in the UAE, Abu Dhabi to be specific. But there has been some level of campaign against realtors. Will I say against? Some kind of an expose about the activities of realtors in Nigeria I would like you to speak to, and the pricing of properties in Nigeria, especially in the eyebrow area like Banana Island, Ikoyi, where I know a gentleman, I think on TikTok or on Instagram, who is always on their case saying he will bring a property, say, in Jersey or in LA or in some developed clime somewhere and put it side by side, the same price with the one we have in Nigeria. And when you look at the one in LA and look at some of the ones in Nigeria, like a mansion versus a hostel, but they're the same price. So in your view, are real estate, especially the high end of the 1% or the 1% overpriced?
Well, I would say that in some instances it looked overpriced, and on the other side, if you look at the economic factor, comparing the Nigerian real estate industry to the international market, it's a bit of there's a huge gap and there's a huge difference in terms of you know, the way and how real estate is run abroad and compared to Nigeria. However, it is, I feel there's a gap that needs to be bridged. I feel in some aspects, Nigerian real estate is not overpriced, going by what they offer, going by how things are put together, going by the infrastructures and the quality that the developers are bringing from abroad, and, you know, going by the exchange rates of how they import most of their materials into the country. So I mean, it's a general thing. Same thing happens in other industries as well, where you compare the cost of purchasing items or doing things outside the country compared to what we have home. It still goes down to the economy, and I feel like yes, there's still a bit of gap and a bit of overpricing.
So do us a quick comparative analytics from what you do in Abu Dhabi and here in Nigeria. What is the major difference, and what can we learn?
I would say that in Abu Dhabi here, yeah, the real estate industry is a highly regulated industry. Compared to what we have back home, I mean, things are beginning to change a bit, but compared to what we have here, the entire real estate sector is highly regulated and put things in order. So it makes things easier to gives a lot of security to investors, to buyers, to landlords, to tenants, and whoever is involved. So I believe what really works here is the regulation. There are lots of bodies that are involved in regulating real estate, and, you know, real estate is broad. And I think this is one thing we need to take a cue from, the way things are run abroad. If we can inculcate that back home, I feel there'll be a huge difference.
When you say it's broad, what do you mean? That's the specifics I wanted you to break down. Regulation, right. What are the gaps in our regulation? Because I'm happy for some months now we haven't seen collapse. I think there was just one recently. In Lagos, for instance, it's almost like every other time there's a building being collapsing here and there. But lately, I think there's been some level of improvement. We must acknowledge that. So the level of regulation, what do you mean by level of regulation? And maybe, you know, just break it down for us.
All right, for instance, here, before a developer goes into a project, there's a lot of scrutiny and a lot of rules that has to be abided by. Before an investor goes into, they have to present their proposal, their aim, their plan to the governmental body that is in charge, and a lot of scrutinization is done. from the scratch, even to the point of investors, the materials that will be used, the construction timing, and the workers, the different aspects of it had to be considered first before giving an approval. You can't just say because you're a developer, you have the money, you have the backing, you can go into starting real estate or starting a project here. There has to be a lot of certification that has to be given. And I feel like if this is also looked into, if developers are made to open up on their plans, for instance, here, if you're a developer, before you start a project, you have to show to the government that, oh, I have the funds, I have the capacity to see over this project without investors' funds. I don't depend on the investors. So unlike what we have in some aspects of our industry back home, where the projects are being done with funds. At the moment the project is launched, they start selling to accumulate funds to proceed. But here it's a different thing. So there is a regulation that all developers have to abide by from the start to the finish. There are different bodies responsible for different stages of the plans before any project is being gone. So which avoids any form of defect, any form of unrealistic proposal by a developer. So it is really broad here, and it is highly regulated. And that's what I can say.
And hearing you talk about the quantum of work alone shows, just how tasking and taxing it may have been, to navigate the novel environment before you got to the peak where you are. And I'd like you to speak to that in relation to how most Nigerians take up menial tasks like the job of a steward, the job of a housekeeper, street business in Dubai, and by extension, the United Arab Emirates, to make ends meet. How did you achieve that mental bypass to becoming a real estate practitioner and not subscribing to those other jobs?
Well, I would say that I'm a very ambitious person, and it's inborn. When I came into this country in 2016, I'm one person that when I get to any environment, I want to study and take advantage of the environment to know what the environment needs me for, not what I need from the environment. I feel like we all started from somewhere, with all due respect to everyone that took up the menial jobs as well. We all started from somewhere, but there is a mental block that I have removed from my mental space while coming here, knowing fully well that I have the goal, I have the drive, I have a dream, and I was just ready to follow it. So I started off just like every other person. It wasn't easy in the beginning, and I mean, it was just a determination to keep learning what the country can offer, what the cities can offer, to keep growing in the market and try to start to meet people. So I think this is what worked for me.
And I was hoping that you would also share the backstory to that, so that people can have, a full picture of what you went through. We've heard part of your story, how you were in the banking sector back in Nigeria, and then you were also somehow in Computer Village. Please talk to us about that.
Right. I mean, I was on the banking sector in 2009, 2010, when there was a massive layoff. So I tried other options to work, but I've been a salesperson all my life. So I'm one of the few people that I know can sell you to you, if you know what that means. I started off with the banking. Then after the job ended, I had to look for a way to make ends meet. I have a friend who was working in Computer Village. So I joined in there, started to sell phone on the streets, getting from one person. I never had a shop, so I started getting from one person. But at the back of my mind, this wasn't my final destination. While I was doing that, I was still job hunting. I was still trying to get back to the professional line. So coming to the UAE in 2015, I started as a visitor. I came in with a 3-month visa, start job hunting just like every other person. But I looked at the country and I was like, okay, what can I do? What is it that, in this sales that I have passion for? What industry can I get to that could offer me job security and that can make me strive? So I looked around and I saw that the country is a growing country. Lots of projects were ongoing. People were coming in and out. So what do people need that cannot get out of style? And that is having a shelter over everyone's head. So I decided to pick up real estate, and that's how it's all started. It wasn't easy. It was a long journey. I mean, I started in Dubai while I live in Abu Dhabi. So I was traveling to Dubai every day without no car, without no driver's license. A lot of time I stayed in metro station just to get to clients, and the story is a long one, but we thank God for where we are today.
Fantastic story. Quite inspiring, if you ask me. And I'm sure a lot of people who now know your story are quite inspired for what you've been able to achieve. Latubasun Fatoke, CEO, Crest Range Properties LLC, joining us from Abu Dhabi in the UAE, bringing us up to speed as to his enterprise. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get to the next leg of the conversation, and that's to do with technology. Join us again in just a moment. We'll be right back.
We're joined on the program by Chef Paul Abdul, a hospitality consultant and CEO, Face Food Concept. Is that
Welcome back. So we have just a little more space for more inspiration on the program today. And so in this knowledge-driven world, technology seems to be moving at the speed of light. So are we leaving some persons or group of persons behind? And if we are we thinking about it? Let's talk about this together. And joining us is a global Edtech leader, program strategist, youth skilling advocate, Mr. Babatunde Vaughn. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's dive straight into it. So, as I said earlier, technology is moving fast. You know, and some of us are even wondering where this is headed and if we'll still be where we are, you know, with this space. As far as inclusion is concerned, are we also thinking about how those who are with disabilities also need to be empowered?
I don't think we're doing so much good job with that at the moment. To start with, and that's like a very blunt, straightforward answer. Many times when we look at technology, and even for people who are inventors or designers, you're probably thinking about how many people are using my product. So you're looking at adoption, you're thinking about usage, you're thinking about how can I get more people to use it. So you're putting a lot of effort into marketing. But an important question that we're not asking ourselves is who is missing. Because that helps you to be able to see that you might be looking at just one end of the margin, and you have lost sight completely on the other end of the margin. So we need to start thinking about the kind of challenges that are very peculiar to us on the African continent, and not just Nigeria alone, right? Low bandwidth is still a very big problem. We have varied literacy levels, right? We have contextual cases, right? We have culture. So when we think about these things, and then we now have learners that have different abilities, right? Some people learn differently. Some people need gamification to learn, right? Some people need to be outside there. They want to see the sunlight to learn, right? It's not even just technology. So we have diverse learners in the classroom, right? Outside of the classroom. And I think that right now, what we are doing is serving the privilege. So you find products working in Lagos, working in Nairobi, working in Johannesburg, but when you take them to a place like Hamuloko, it's not going to work. All right, but you have people in those places who are already marginalized, and that's the way I'll think about it.
So what kinds of technologies are available to fill these gaps that you're talking about? I mean, we see every day policymakers, legislators go to school with gadgets, distributing them. But when we think about schools of persons with special needs, a Chele school for the blind, what are the types of technologies that they require as well?
I think I can't give you specifically and say that this is the kind of technology that they require. What I think needs to be done, right, is to have needs assessment in those areas, right? What has been happening so far is building for communities. What needs to be happening is building with communities, right? You cannot say that a particular technology is going to work in an environment and you take it there. Because most likely the people who designed the technology, the people who built that technology, do not have like first-hand experience of the situation on ground, right? So I'll give you an example. People would come to me and say, hey, Babati, can you help us to review this product we're about to launch? And I say to them, look, I'm going to help you. I'll share the feedback. But what I have seen, or what I say to them eventually is, how many educators were involved in the development of this product, right? How many students did they listen to, right? How many persons with disabilities were engaged in this product? Yes, you will not be able to design for everybody. It's not possible. You probably have your most viable product, your MVP. You're designing that maybe for a very entry-level solution. But if you want to keep designing for the privileged, then you know that's what you're doing, right? Because they already have access. So you have to think about people that need sight, or people that sort of like are visually impaired, right? These people will sort of need to be able to touch. They need something that they can actually use, right? Maybe they want to run their fingers on it so that they can actually understand what a particular thing is. So we have to think about people who have such kind of learning disabilities. I will give you another example. There are some people, I used to struggle with a blackboard, right? So then later on in life, I found out that the whiteboard was not even as preferred as a blackboard, right? So you have people who, because of the kind of sight challenges that they have in the classroom, if you have a whiteboard, they're actually struggling to be able to see just because of the background, right? You have people like that. So how can we have technologies sort of that somebody can change their own appearance without necessarily altering the context, right? So you can switch between night modes, you can move from black screen to blue screen, you can increase the text of what you're saying, right? Because you have different stuff. You can increase the speed of the readout loud program, right? So those are some of the things that you need to start thinking about.
You know, this point you're making is really vital. Yeah. And it's quite funny how, you know, we don't pay attention to these things that are really the building blocks of life, of education. Because once a child misses it from that point, it's going to mess the child's trajectory. So if it doesn't work for you, the blackboard doesn't work for you, and they keep saying, no, work with the blackboard, you realize that that child loses it from there, and it only takes grace to put the child back on track. But I want to make this point, or I want you to make this point, Baba T. That's what people call you, right? Yeah. So what is our biggest challenge? Because you hear the market, because building technology is expensive. It's not cheap. And you hear the market saying, or the big tech saying, well, you have the numbers, but you don't necessarily have the money. Your 200 million is not really $200 billion when you multiply it. It's not as much. So gone are the days when we say we have a market. We have plenty of people, because they look at it and they don't see too much money. So education is social. Absolutely. There's also the commercial bit, but primarily it is social. So where can we get the money from to build these technologies for the rural areas where the per capita income is not really?
I think we have to start by even looking at what we're doing internally, right? From a government's perspective. UNESCO would say that up until 6% of the budget, the GDP sort of, should be allocated towards education, right? And the other way to look at it is to say between 10% or 15% of public expenditure should actually go into education, right? So if you have a child and this person scores 85 over 100, you will still give them a great thumbs up, like you've done so well. So we don't necessarily need to be aiming towards 6%, like UNESCO had said, because you have other challenges. But are we even reaching like 4% of that, right? I don't think we're there yet. So I think, one, before you begin to ask people to come and invest, before you get external investors to come and throw in, put their weight behind what you are doing, I think you also need to be doing much more from a government's perspective. That's one. Now, I also believe that a lot of people who are building solutions, right, it's good to think about products from three angles: people, profits, right, and purpose. Right? A lot of people are so profit-centered. And because you're profit-centered, you're thinking about the margins from the very beginning. You miss out on the opportunity to scale, right? If you're designing the solution that might cost 1,000 naira, right, and that can reach 1 million people, but you also have a solution that would cost 50,000 naira, that will probably not be able to reach more than 100,000 people. So you have to think about what you're designing in a way that it's going to be able to scale. And again, I'm not here to pitch products. I'm not here to talk about.
So where do we really begin from? Don't you think we should begin from tokenism first to solve this problem? Because if we talk about, he's talked about purchasing power parity. I'll give you a classic example. A state of emergency declared in Rivers State. Why? Because national assets are involved. There's Benue State that there's been carnage going on. It has not been declared. I just want you to look at...
As a plateau, right?
Yes. So how government looks at this thing sometimes. Just two explosions, and then the state of emergency was declared. So don't you think we should start from tokenism first, and then we can approach to profitability? Because that looks like it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. But again, another thing I would like to slot into that, which I think is always missing in the mix, right? Teacher capacity development. Now, this does not have to be like a large scale. People want to use Microsoft Teams. I used to work for Microsoft in the classroom, right? That's like you're going above and above and above, right? But the basic things of helping educators to understand even how to use maybe WhatsApp for teaching, for example, right? You're not looking at the big tech yet, right? You probably want students to be able to use their parents' WhatsApp on a small smartphone, not like a high-end smartphone, right? How do you help educators to drive learner engagement using WhatsApp, right? How can they share like bite-sized documents for the students to read from time to time? Because what we are trying to do is not just a minute. What we are trying to do is not necessary. So look, technology should be a bridge, not a barrier.
No, I'm not countering what you're saying. Yeah. It just hit me. I just had a light bulb moment that, yes, we talk WhatsApp, we talk Microsoft Teams, but we forget, maybe we don't, but these things were created for a context, a people, and I think you mentioned that. Yeah. What is wrong with Nigeria creating its own product that can work with low bandwidth? That all you need is just 100 KB to work in a village instead of relying on a platform that needs gigabytes to operate. Is anybody thinking that? Or, I don't know, am I just asking for too much?
I think there are people who are thinking in that direction, yes. We might not be seeing their work being very evident, right? But I believe that it's one thing to say we want to design for low bandwidth. The question we should be asking is, what's the end goal? Because the purpose of education is actually to help people to develop skills that will help them to impact their environment, right? So the technology should never determine what we want to teach. What we want to teach should determine the technology we want to use, right? So if you say that I'm trying
the money you have.
Yeah, so if you say you're trying to help students in a particular area.
We're totally out of time. Just land on that thought so that we can wrap up.
If you say you're trying to help students to be able to use technology to maybe develop certain skills, you have to ask yourself questions, very important questions. Who are the students we're trying to reach?
All right.
And would this actually help them to develop those skills?
A lot to reflect on, and most thank you very much, Mr. Babatunde Vaughan, Global EdTech Leader, Program Strategist, Youth Skilling Advocate. Thank you so much for your time on the program. And we hope some of your own ideas are scaled to the next level.
Thank you so much.
And that's our offering for you this day. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Thank you for your time as well. Sunrise Daily is up at the top of the hour. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. Bye-bye.
I hope Nigeria and Africa can begin to think and solve its own problems. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Have a great day. Goodbye.